Okay, well, let's go ahead. And yes, this is being recorded, so that's useful. We can let others watch this later. The presentation I'm going to be giving is one that I usually give at the beginning of my GIS programming software development class. And it's just a quick introduction to Tethys. It was a 20-minute presentation that I gave at a meeting of the American Water Resources Association, AWRA, at their GIS and Water Resources Conference 2 years ago. And I think it's still fairly relevant because the basic concepts behind Tethys are the same. I think this was we had just released Tethys 2, and so there was like, a lot of this was sort of rolling out some of the things that were on Tethys 2, but really it's quite relevant still all around. So let me pull open some slides and share them with you. All right, slideshow from the start. This was in Orlando. That was nice. It's always nice to go to Orlando for a meeting. Let me get this thing sharing.
Hey, Dr. Ames. Quick question before we dive into it. I didn't realize it was Tethys today that we're going over. Do you think it would be helpful, since I took the class already? Do you think it'd be helpful?
That's true. Michael, you saw this presentation. You worked on Tethys quite a bit. You don't necessarily need to sit through this. This is supposed to be a crash course for Daniel and Travis and Alma and some of them that haven't used Tethys yet. So
gotcha. Okay.
We will not be offended if you slip away. That's just fine.
Sounds good. I think I'll drop off.
Okay, but Michael, go do something productive.
Will do.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, so the title of this presentation is Water Resources Web Apps Made Easier-ish, Introducing Tethys 2.0. Really, now we're up to Tethys 3.0. And the reason I say easier-ish is because I think that we've said for years that Tethys, the point of Tethys, since we released it in 2014, 15, when it came out of BYU, and some PhD students working on it, Nathan Swain among them on the list here, was, wow, we're really going to simplify deploying water resources web applications. And I think what we found over the years is that Tethys does simplify and make it easier, but not as easy as one might like. And that's why I said easier-ish, because there's still quite a bit of challenge associated with how we build and deploy these water resources web apps. So with that in mind, this is the abstract I submitted at that conference. When we go to these academic conferences, we like to give nice, heady, wordy abstracts that make everything sound quite scientific and get them really excited about coming and listening to our talks. But in fact, actually, this was a pretty good abstract. From the dawn of the internet, water resources data scientists and engineers are continually and boldly engaged with the challenge of developing and deploying. This is one of my better abstracts. I knew nobody would read it, and so I was being a little bit of silly in there. But in the end, ultimately, what this is doing is trying to say that it can be hard to make the computer show good water pictures and numbers. And so this is using, there's like this website, this guy's tried to like dumb down science using only the top 1,000 most common words in the English language. And this is what happens if you try to write this abstract that way. Our water god computer running thing helps make it easier. Water god is Tethys. So this is the short version of the abstract. It's hard, we're trying to make it easier. Let's just say that you have been asked by your professor to build a website called ilovewaterandgis.com. And you say, oh yeah, that's pretty easy. I'm talking about you, Alma, now. But you took an HTML class in high school, and you're like, yeah, I think I could do that. And so you get your HTML5 textbook out, and you start building a little web page for I Love Water and GIS. And then your professor says, well, that's great, but we also need it to look pretty. And so you say, oh yeah, that's right. Remember, we have to do cascading style sheets to make it look nice. And then your professor says, yeah, but it also has to be interactive. And you remember, that's right. I remember back in high school, they introduced us briefly to JavaScript. and how JavaScript can be used to make web pages interactive. So now you're going to have to introduce some JavaScript in here. So you've got HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and between the three of those, you can build a pretty nice, good-looking interactive web page. But this is a GIS and water web page, and so in order to put this thing together, you're going to need some kind of maps. And so you are going to search the web and find some open source and free JavaScript mapping libraries, and you're going to grab one of them, like OpenLayers, and bring it in. And that's okay. It's another technology, but you're good at learning technologies. When you do this OpenLayers gives you the ability to do kind of static maps. But what if you want to do dynamic maps that are built on a server and that come to your web page? Then you probably need something like a map server system like Geoserver. Geoserver will let you load shapefiles and data sets onto a backend server and then have them, they could actually change on that server, and then OpenLayers or some front end will grab the current one. So now you've got to learn another technology and install Geoserver, which isn't terrible. The real challenge arises when you need to start really doing data editing or map data editing. And that's where you need some kind of an interactive database on the back end, like PostGIS. By the way, there is another front end mapping tool called ArcGIS JavaScript that you might also want to learn and implement in there. So for interactivity, we're going to do some, let's see, we want to do some computation. You guys have taken GIS classes. You know that the cool thing about GIS is you can like do a buffer or an intersect or a resample or something like that. So you need the tools to do that. You could do that with the ArcGIS stuff or also with an open source library called 52 North. So now we're displaying the maps here. We're pulling the data from Geoserver. We're editing them in 52 North. And then we're going to use PostGIS as our backend database to store all of the raw shapefile data. So Geoserver is serving that, but PostGIS is actually storing it and letting you edit it. The numbers, and 52 North is doing the computations like buffer and so forth. Now this is starting to look a little bit more complicated, something that might be tricky to do with just a high school HTML class. We're probably up to a semester's worth of work just to get all of this installed, learn the basic concepts, and get it up and running. But this doesn't even take into account one of the bigger issues in building a website, which is what programming language are you going to use? So many of our engineers and engineering students are using Python to do analysis nowadays, that we don't want them to have to do everything in JavaScript. So it'd be cool if you could build your website, Alma, ilovewaterandgis.com, such that they could program in Python on the back end. So that's going to take a little bit more work. We'll probably have you install Django for that, because Django is a back-end Python system, and it's used to run, I think it runs Facebook or Instagram, or it runs, I don't know, several major websites run based on Django, because that way the programmers could do most of their heavy lifting in Python. So if you wouldn't mind, please install Django. And by the way, we also need you to put in some kind of a user management system so that people can log in and log out. And based on how they're logged in, they can sort of interact with your maps differently than the other person that logs in. Like you might want this guy here in the front to just have user access where he can just view the data, but maybe this gal on the right, she gets to actually edit the data, and maybe the guy on the left, he actually can add more data to the system and kind of control the whole setup. Okay, suddenly ilovewaterandgis.com has gone from a week-long project to several months, if not a couple of years, to put this together. For one person anyway, to learn all of this stuff. So what we did about 5 years ago now, in 2014-15, a couple of PhD students at BYU in civil engineering, working with us professors, researched all of these and probably a dozen other libraries and tools like this, and selected out a set of these tools and said, what if we could take these tools and put them in a box, a big old box, like this. See how they're going in the box? I want you to pay special attention to that clever animation I'm doing there. Into the box, into the box. So you put them all in one box, and you call that box Tethys, hence the T on the front of the box there. We'll even put a user management system into the box. And then you have Tethys platform. Basically, it's a big box of WebGIS stuff, a big box that I can install, and I did actually a few weeks ago again on my Mac here, with literally one command line at the terminal. One command line, grabs, installs all of those components and does it in a framework that's all kind of padded, like a nice padded room, and set up and ready to be used and kind of ready to be run. And then a nice website with lots of training information on how to use all that stuff in there. And what comes out of the big box of web stuff for making web apps? Apps. By the way, when I gave this presentation in Orlando, that's the point when the people in the audience who were getting a little sleepy started jumping, because I had this all on plugged into their overhead sound system. So if you didn't catch that, those are the apps popping out of there. Okay, Alma, do you need me to do that again?
I think I saw it.
Anybody else? Okay.
It's pretty fun.
All right. Well, I like being the fun professor at these boring, stodgy conferences. So, Tethys platform, a big box of WebGIS stuff for making web applications. So the question arises, what is a web app? Well, you think about an app on your phone, an app on your tablet or whatever. These are the key characteristics that I've sort of pulled out of what is an app. Single purpose, really an app kind of does one thing and does it well. Self-explanatory, you don't expect to have to go read a user manual for all the apps on your phone, do you? You just tap it and it sort of knows what to do and you know what to do. Modular, meaning that it lives by itself on your phone. It's not necessarily connected to all the other apps on your phone. Presented in a portal. What's the portal? Well, here's the portal. It's your phone home screen. That's the portal. Installable and removable. You can install each app independently and remove it independently. And then independently developed, meaning each one of these things were created by a different company or a different individual developer. And the developer doesn't have to have the full access and knowledge of every other app on that phone in order to develop her app or his app. So these are the characteristics of an app. I'm sure there are other ones, but these are the 6 most common characteristics, I think, of an iPhone app or a tablet app. And these are the characteristics we tried to capture in Tethys. And so the Tethys portal is here. Single purpose apps are all of these things. They're modular. They don't require the other apps necessarily to run. They're presented in the portal. They can be installed and removed independently and developed independently. So this is a pretty unique thing that doesn't really exist in the rest of the web world that much. There are a few other places where it exists, but it's kind of cool and it's unique. So one might ask, oh, by the way, there's one of the apps popped out. One might ask, isn't a web app basically just a website? And what's the difference? And I like to make this kind of a distinction. Here's a website. This is the USGS Mississippi River Historic Map Viewer System. Upper Midwest Environmental Sciences Center put this together. And it's really cool. These are hand-drawn maps from the 1800s and 1900s. And you can see on the right-hand side there, you can turn on different maps and zoom into them. They've been georectified and made to look cool in there. So it's another water resources, GIS-based web application. So what's the difference? The difference is that this is a single purpose and self-explanatory web site. However, it's not particularly modular. This is all coded and hard-coded into the links up above and into the rest of the website. It's not modular as far as I could tell. It doesn't look like this is a set of web pages that could be installed or removed independently. Probably, I don't know how independently developed it was, probably not, because it's hard-coded into the rest of the website. So whoever developed this tool had to have access to the full website and build all the tentacles and to tie it all together and integrate it all. Versus a web app, which is completely installable and removable independently. It can be taken out at any time without breaking any of the rest of the website, put in without recoding the website or even changing a menu item. It's totally independent. That's a pretty cool feature of web apps and web applications. So I hope that's pretty clear. And my goal in presenting this really at the conferences is to let people understand that there's this paradigm of mobile apps that could actually be used on a website. Well, let's take a quick look at what it takes to install Tethys. So for those of you who have not installed Tethys yet, with version 2, it got pretty simple. Sorry for the loud music. Sorry, not sorry. We're going to bump it up a little bit. So one line of code, and then that we just copied from the tethsplatform.org website. It's going to go ahead and install all that jazz that I showed you at the beginning. And now it's installed and running. I can open it and look at my portal. Log into it. There are no apps. I like showing people that you can do some customization right out of the box. Some colors.
Dr. Ames,
I'm now customizing it.
are we supposed to be seeing your screen? We're still seeing the YouTube, the slides, I guess. Is that what we're supposed to be seeing?
No, you are not supposed to be seeing the slides.
Okay.
You're missing the whole cool thing here. Hold on a second. I'll do the short version of it here because that's important to see. Let's see. Zoom, zoom. Zoom. Share my screen. Oh, okay. How about now? Can you see YouTube opening?
That's better, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna turn down the music on it now because that was more just for flashiness of my presentation. But the coolness here is literally just copying a line of code and then pasting it into my terminal. And running it. And actually here it's two lines, one to grab the script and one to run the script. But in the newest version, it's one. I do need to install Miniconda, which is the sort of containering environment, kind of a virtualization environment. Once Miniconda is installed and we run the Tethys platform repo, we're grabbing the whole thing from GitHub right now. And then now that it's on here, we're installing. So I'm going to zoom ahead a little bit. This actually was kind of fun to show in the conference because people were astounded that you could install all that stuff and set it up just with a couple of lines of code instead of months and months of research and figuring it all out. And then here I'm customizing the general settings for the homepage. So when I teach this in the class, I always make all the students customize their portals right away so that A, I can know that they've actually got it installed and they're doing their own custom environment. And B, just because it's nice, it's cool to be able to customize it. I'm going to grab a web app off the web. This is the EPA watershed delineation app that's sitting on GitHub. It's one we built a year or two before this presentation. This is the one I did over a weekend when I was learning how to write my first Tethys app. And so I'm going to set it up and install it in the portal and then rerun the portal. And now I've got a refresh and there's the app sitting in the portal. And this app basically lets you find any place in the country and see the stream network there and delineate the downstream and the upstream river segments that flow in and out of that point. And there's the downstream from Hobble Creek all the way to Salt Lake City. And I think the last thing this one shows is, it's installing another one. This is the dewatering app, a groundwater app. And then also this one is the EPA. Okay, so this is the EPA Net Model repository where we can pull models off the web and display the models and look at them. All right, so last but not least, building a new app, use the Scaffold command and fill in some information. and then install it, and there we start our portal again. And unfortunately, I always cut that out just a little too soon, right before you can even see the new app. But here's the new app that we just set up and installed. Yeah, you can't hardly see it. So we just discovered the other day that there are, okay, so here is the basic template for a new app. You can see it's just filled with junk. Heading 1, heading 2, welcome, blah, 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 my awesome app. We learned the other day that there are some settings now inside Tethys that allow you to choose from 2 or 3 different startup templates that look different. Maybe you don't need the sidebar, maybe you don't need the bottom navigation panel or the top panel or so forth. So effectively, the end of this story about welcome to Introduction to Tethys is that we have greatly lowered the bar for building out web applications for water resources and GIS. Here's some that students did in one of my classes. This one, they have to draw a line on the landscape, and then it had to bring up a progress bar. Apparently this is their choice for a progress bar. And then it finds the elevation profile. So, you know, we're talking about the bar being lowered enough that undergraduate civil engineering students could build something fairly complex like this over the course of a semester project. A bunch of these were all represented at that conference that we were at, and there's a bunch more apps. This is our stuff for GeoGlows that you've heard talked about. And Aquaveo in town, who you're all aware of, now has a very complete apps library. At the time I snapshotted them, they only had 1 app there, but they were working on some water pipe network analysis tools. And finally, the last thing here, you've heard us talk about a warehouse. This is what Rohit's working on. He's trying to develop basically an app store or a play store for Tethys apps, where you can go in and browse a list of available apps and just pick a button and have it download any of these kinds of water resources apps and stick them into your portal. The idea being that then our Severe partners can just grab the apps they need. Our La Plata Basin GeoGlows partners can grab the apps they need from the portal. Our ECMod partners can grab the apps they need and sort of build out their own Tethys portal. So that is the short version of the quick intro to what is Tethys, why does it matter, what's the big deal. So let me just ask if there are any questions right now, and then we'll turn the time over to Dr. Nelson, who's going to walk you through doing a quick little installation and building an app.
I got a question. Is Tethys something that the lab created, or was that something that was already around?
Yeah, Evan, so it was about 5 years ago. We had a project called the CI Water Project from the National Science Foundation with quite a lot of money. We hired 2 or 3 PhD students and master's students and told them we needed to build basically that project thing I started with at the very beginning of, you know, we need a I Love Water and GIS website. Mm-hmm. And they very cleverly started researching all of the open source tools and then built that big box of GIS stuff. So that is all created here at BYU. Cool. The individual components though, Django, Geoserver, you know, everything, all those different parts and pieces, those already all existed.
Great.
Yeah.
Dr. Ames, which class is it that you do like a Tethys project?
That's 514. So we
Gotcha.
do it in 514, which I did last fall. I'll be doing again, not this fall, but the following fall. This fall, I'll do a hydroinformatics class where we'll touch on Tethys a little bit, but mostly in the hydroinformatics, it's databases and data structures and hardware and software for managing data itself.
What's the name of 514? Is it?
It's geospatial software development.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And that is available to graduate students and undergraduate students.
I have a quick question. for example, you're talking about creating new apps. What about if you want to add features to an existing app that you don't want to, you want to do something similar or borrow what they have, or and just said it's some feature, so adding a feature or improving a feature. Is that okay, or the repositories are separate, or you have access to that type of things?
Well, hopefully you guys, so y'all learned quite a bit about GitHub recently, and we have been trying to organize all of our BYU Hydroinformatics Lab apps in the same GitHub repository here. And what that means is that you can clone any one of these and build on it. So for example, say you're interested in the Grace app or the Hydro Explorer and you want to modify it or add to it. There are two approaches. One would be to, or Hydroserver Lite. One approach would be to clone this app here and then make all of your edits and so forth, and then push it to a new repository called Grace 3 or Daniel's Grace modifications. The other approach would be to submit a pull request. So you make modifications and then you submit a pull request to the original owner of that app. And you're basically asking them to take your changes and put it into the core.
Oh, no, I understand that. I'm just wondering, like, so do we need to talk to the person so to verify that it doesn't break? Or I'm more wondering about the approval process of.
Yeah, well, that's definitely built in. I mean, obviously GitHub has their pull request approval process. And so, yeah, we're not asking any students to just like commit directly to the repo. We should use the pull request approach if you're changing somebody else's app, for sure.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that way that gives that person that created the app a chance to look at your changes, see if they like them, see if it's general enough for everybody. Yeah, good question.
Sounds good.
This is the one right now that some of you know, Abu, he's working on this HydroShare API Tethys app. It's a Tethys app that exposes all of the functionality of HydroShare's backend API for storing data and getting data and building resources. We're gonna have him demo that in a lab meeting soon, because that's a case where you wouldn't want to change this app, but you might want to clone it and learn from it, because he's got all the code in there to do all this like API stuff. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, Dr. Nelson, are you there?
Sorry, my other meeting has kept me pretty occupied. So I know you've been through the training. We were going to try to maybe set up Tethys, install Tethys, but I don't know if we have enough people here. Travis, have you done it?
No, I haven't. I was hoping to,
Okay.
but I've been working on finals all yesterday and today.
Well, here, let me at least show something from my screen. Jim, if you don't want to do a full like setup, I've actually got Tethys running here. If you guys can see, can you see my terminal here?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think too, Dan, if you can point them to how they install, set up their own, and I think you went, how they install their Tethys environment.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so you're gonna, for that, you'll need to go to tethysplatform.org and getting started, documentation.
It's under getting started.
Right there. And you're going to install this Conda package. If you don't know what a Conda package is, don't worry about it. Just follow the instructions.
So this is kind of the exercise from here. I would, I thought about maybe going through this together, but we can just let everybody try to install Tethys. And as you have questions, reach out and let us know, and work together. I mean, we could leave the the meeting running here, and you could try to install it, and we can kind of see what questions you have.
Let me just take a minute and show you my environment. Well, I've got it open here. So inside of the shell, or in my case, the terminal program inside of my Mac, I've gone in here. Actually, I'll start from scratch again. I'll open it back up. And I need to go into Conda, which I said is like a virtualization environment that kind of packages stuff together so that it doesn't mess with anything else on my computer. And I'm going to activate. So this is after you get it in, after you follow the instructions on the screen behind me here, then you're going to activate Tethys. Now you can see it says I'm in the Tethys environment here. And when I'm in Tethys, I can still do all the same commands that I would normally do in Unix or in Linux or in my OS X shell, like move around. So I'm going to move in. So I just did ls to look at the folder paths, all the folders that are in there. I'm going to move into my Tethys folder. You can see inside my Tethys folder, I have a lot of people just by name. These are students who were in my class last semester, and also students that are working on things for me right now still. And from here, we can look at, here what we could do actually is I can go cd Rohit and go to Rohit's app, which is his warehouse. And now I'm going to get pull just to grab the latest version of it, because he's done a lot of work on it recently. So in the last few days since I talked to him, so I pulled the latest version, and I'll do Tethys manage start. This will start up my Tethys server. Now it's open. Okay, so the server's running in development mode on the back end of my computer. I can actually now go to the web page that's telling me this one, 127.0.0.1:8000, port 8000. So this is me now on it. And you can see that it's actually pulling up from my own computer here, a local host website. And I'll log in by default. The username, password are admin and pass. And this is the app I just updated from Rohit, the warehouse. I have 4 apps installed on my local portal here, but let's run Rohit's warehouse for a second. And so he's got 3, so the warehouse is kind of interesting because it's not displayed very well just yet, but he's got 3 apps in the warehouse that I can choose to install into my portal. I have geocode, Python API demonstration, and GLDAS. He's got other ones in here like the snow inspector. So if I want the snow inspector, this is kind of like the future of HydroShare, or the future of Tethys. If I want it, I can say I want to install the snow inspector version 3, and it's going to basically try to automate all the back-end stuff of finding the snow inspector app and preparing it and downloading it and putting it into my portal. So I thought this would be kind of interesting to try, because what we'd like to have happen is the apps you guys build or work on down the road ultimately to live inside this warehouse, so that anybody can go to the warehouse and see all of the apps that are available and pick one and have it, download it, install it, just like the App Store does on your phone. Looks like it's working. You can see the terminal on the back end is telling me what's happening on my server. Starting installation of Snow Inspector, installing version 3. Con install may take a couple of minutes to complete depending on how complicated the environment is. Please wait. And this is what's happening on the server. This is what's happening to the user using my web page or using my app. They're getting this notice put out to them. Solving environment, looks like, oh, it says failed with initial frozen solve, retrying with flexible solve. I don't know what that means. It's something on the back end that Rohit's App Store is doing to try to get this app installed. There it goes. Package metadata collection done. Unfortunately, this is a very slow process. It's, I don't know, we're gonna have to figure out how to make this faster, but if we can just get it to work, that'll be the first step. Working, done. Install notifications, message, package, metadata collection done. I think. Thing is, this snow inspector is actually a very small app. It's pretty tiny. But what he's having to do on the back end is a lot of checks and double checks to make sure that every piece of the web framework that Snow Inspector needs is there, and it's the right version, and that it's got, if there are any like dependencies, other modules or Python libraries or things it needs, it has to go try to find those and install them. I'm feeling like it may be done and it's just not telling us that it's done. Let's go. All right, didn't quite finish. But that's that app. Let me show one more. I'm going to update I want to update this one because I haven't updated the HydroShare Python API demonstration app for a couple of days. And so I'm going to Control C to kill the server. I'm going to go into a different folder and out of Rohit's folder and into Abhishek's, into his HydroShare app. And I'll do git pull. Let's grab the latest version. Okay, it's up to date. So he hasn't pushed in the last 2 days, which means this, let's start the server up again. Okay, let's do a quick refresh. Oh, look at that. The Snow Inspector did finally install. Ha, cool. So the warehouse worked. Yay. We have the Snow Inspector. It was written by a PhD student that was here a little while ago, a couple of years ago. It lets you basically click any point in the world and it will dig through NASA historic snow data sets to build a chart showing how much snow appeared at that location over the last however many days you choose. That's cool. So I can tell Rohit that the warehouse worked and installed the Snow Inspector. And this is the other app that we're actively working on right now with Abhishek, or Abu, some of you know him. He's building an app here that demonstrates all of the capabilities of HydroShare through the API, like creating a resource, adding a file to a resource, deleting a resource. So if you don't know what HydroShare is, it's a data storage website, and it has an API that you can access. You can do things through their front end, or you can do it through the back door, and this is all the backdoor access to HydroShare. And this is an example where we're hoping people will clone this code and then use it to learn how to work with HydroShare. So I guess I'll stop there. Why don't you all finish your finals and then try to install Tethys platform on your own computers, and then we'll catch up again next week.
Hey, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd be happy now to stay on, and if you all, those of you that are here, we can just walk through and install Tethys if you want to go through those steps together. And would you guys like to do that? Alma,
That
Evan.
works for me. I'm
No
good either
problem.
way.
I mean, I have to head out at 2, but until then, I'm available.
Rohit tells me it should take about 5 minutes. Of course, that's Rohit.
Great.
Cool.
But let's go ahead and try.
Okay.
Do you want to share? Who wants to share their screen and do it? Be the driver.
I'm actually,
Alma or Travis share and watch it happen on their screen.
yeah, we should actually do it with one of you sharing. I think that would be better than, because that's kind of more what you were each seeing, right?
Mhm.
So,
I mean, I just ran the code, and I think I have Tethys now on my computer.
so you can confirm that it's 5 minutes, huh?
You want to share your screen, Evan, and show us what you did?
Sure. Let's see here. So, I think, can you see the stuff over here?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I did the right desktop. So, kind of just.
So, hey, I have a question, Dan, and maybe you know if they open up a terminal window, and maybe you said this earlier, and do they make a directory? Do they just install? What's your recommendation in terms of as they go to install this? Do they make their own directory before they run this install, or do they just do it in the root directory, or what do you say?
Well, let's see. So there's two things that are going on. One is where the Tethys server and everything itself lives. That's going to be in an environment folder in Conda, or like if you look on Evans here, it went into mini Conda.
Right.
And this is exactly where I would have put it, in your user folder. So he's got it under Evan, and then it just installed there. I don't know if that was by default or you specifically chose that spot, Evan. But
the default is just the base, whatever. But I figure it's good to have everything there, and I can make separate environments later.
Okay.
And then for your apps, though, I think it's good just under your username, make a Tethys folder, and then clone all of your apps into that. So you don't have to put the apps. You don't have to code the apps in that deep mini Conda folder. You just do them in a local folder somewhere of your choosing. So this is cool. It says you've activated Tethys. Now what if you do Tethys space DB space start let's see if the database will start.
Tethys DB
space DB space start. This should start the database engine that's used by Tethys. And if you scroll down on the web page for a second, you can see where it says configure. Maybe we were supposed to do configure first. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah.
Try that. Do Tethys space DB space configure. So a lot of the data for Tethys is stored in a PostGIS database in the back end. Okay, now try Tethys DB start. Okay, it must be up and running. So now just do that next command, Tethys manage start.
Actually, I think that might not. Let's see. Oh, okay.
Okay, so you're up and running. So now go to that URL 127.0.0.1:8000. Rohit, I just used the App Store. Okay, good. There you go.
Do I use the admin pass thing?
Uh-huh.
All right.
Okay, so you have no apps loaded, but you have the portal up and running, and you can do things like under the drop-down admin button, there's the site admin, and this is where I was doing some customization. For example, under scroll down, let's see, services,
Yes.
site settings, yeah, general settings and homepage settings. So this is where you can change the name. So instead of saying Tethys Portal, it can say Evans Suite Software System. And you could change the fave icon, branding, all of this jazz, colors, to really customize it and make it unique. So
Do you know how to get the colors that you want, everybody?
I have no clue.
Just do Google. Do you have a good color picker, Dan?
Yeah, I just always Google it. So just open up another tab and just put color picker.
Hexadecimal color picker or something like that.
Or you can do Adobe Cooler. It's pretty good because it's way in depth. But yeah, suggestion.
Cool. Yeah, there's a zillion ways. So
Nice.
if you just pick a color, it's giving you the hex value for it, which in the class I explain in a little more detail how that number is formed. But we don't have to do that right now.
Yeah.
Why not?
Go ahead and save. Yeah.
There should be a Thethe suggestion. We should just have a color picker there instead of
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
like
That's
it's
good.
one line of JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back here.
Yeah, now go to your home. Just click apps at the top, for example.
Yes, there's that
Change
color.
that there. But now you don't have any apps loaded, so why don't we go ahead and put an app in here? So go back to your terminal. And
Hey, you can
Control-C.
put the warehouse app.
Yeah, hey, Rohit, were you on when I ran your warehouse?
No,
Oh,
he
no.
wasn't quite yet.
I did the warehouse and I installed the snow inspector.
Mm-hmm.
It required a restart of the server, but
Yeah.
it did work. Okay, Control-C, Evan. And now go to open up another browser window and let's go get the GitHub link for the warehouse. So go to
I'll just
GitHub.
paste it in the chat.
Oh, it's in the chat. Okay.
I will. I'm just doing that.
I'm trying to teach a man to fish.
Yeah.
Teach a man to Google.
Actually, yeah, do the Google because this is recorded and those who aren't here,
All
then
right.
they'll
So-
see it.
GitHub, and then BYU Hydroinformatics, and warehouse. Let's see if that does it.
Close. Yeah.
The Hydro
So,
view.
so yeah, just go to the first one.
Very first one.
And
There it is, warehouse. And go to clone or download. And copy. Okay. Yep. Now go back to your terminal. And see
Can
what
you make a directory here?
Yeah, do a ls real quick. Ls enter. Okay, so right here I would do mkdir for make directory space and then Tethys. This is where we're going to put your apps. Now go into that folder, cd Tethys. Okay, and right here you can do git space clone space and then control or command V to paste that in. Let's see if that works. Okay, now ls. So now you've got a folder called warehouse. Go into warehouse. ls that one. So let's just run install here. So Tethys space install. You do this inside any app. Just you don't need a YAML. Just install. Yeah. And inside any app folder, once you've cloned one, you can go into it and then install it. Looks like we're getting a little situation here.
we haven't done Tethys gen portal config yet. So if we go back to our installation, getting started instructions.
Did we miss a step? Sorry, I got a
Yeah,
little...
so Tethys gen portal config. Yeah.
I did not do that.
Just, yeah, run that.
Do you have to stop the Tethys portal to do that, or?
Yeah, it should be stopped. And the weirdest thing was it let us set a color even when a portal config wasn't there, which
Oh, that's
is
odd.
super weird, but yeah. Okay, so now if you just run the install command again.
Awesome. Now, Tethys manage start to get the server up and running again.
This is why you want to put something in your macros so you don't have to type Tethys manage start every time.
Exactly. And this is also why my presentation is titled Tethys to Web Applications Made Easier-ish, because, you know, this isn't all just like brain dead stuff. You definitely require some training and work. But okay, so now you have one app installed. That's cool. Now we can do that same method that we just did. We can go find the GitHub links for other apps, and we can like clone them and install them and get another one, clone it, install it. And then you can fill up your portal with all kinds of apps here. You can scaffold new ones, or the warehouse is supposed to automate some of this for you. So tap the warehouse. So let's do one of these. Let's try the GLDAS. Is that one working yet, Rohit? Oh, that actually requires configuration though.
Yeah, so if you go to 1.1, that should work, not this version. But yeah, we can try 1.1. And the configuration is pretty basic. So, I mean, the app won't work locally because you'll need all the files as well.
But
you couldn't install. Yeah. Okay, that's good.
So this is our chance to live test Rohit's work some more.
Yeah.
I guess cancel that.
Oh, interesting.
Try Snow Inspector.
No, none of them will work actually.
If that one didn't work, none will work.
Yeah, so if you go back to your terminal and just do Control-C and then do Tethys install -D. So Tethys space install space -D.
Oh, for the warehouse, to install it in developer mode?
Yeah, because there's the script that is a part of the warehouse, but when you install it as an app, it doesn't copy that script over. So it can't find that script.
Manage start again.
Interesting.
So yeah, we'll have to figure out some way to fix that. Yeah.
Yeah, now refresh your browser. Okay, try GLDAS again.
And let's do 1.1. Yeah. Okay, at least it's running the script this time, so that's good.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so this is cool. So this is exciting because this is like some of our first times really testing the warehouse. And really would like to see more apps in the warehouse. Rohit's going to make the warehouse look beautiful.
So while we're waiting for this install, if you go back to that GitHub repository link that we had looked for on your browser, yeah, if you scroll down, there's a whole testing section. This basically tells you how you would get Tethys 3. If you don't have Tethys 3, you'd set it up, and then you'd install the warehouse app, and then you would install the Snow Inspector using the warehouse app. And then there's a Google form link at the bottom. So we were going to talk more about this next week, but just while we're here, if anybody's willing to try out, you can go ahead and follow these instructions and then click that Google form link and submit any feedback that you find or any issues that you run into.
It looks like it finished. Should we see if it's there?
Yeah, so the Conda install, it's restarting right now. I can see that in the terminal. Okay, yeah, so we can set these or we can just skip right now because we don't have the files anyways. Then the Geoserver can be set or skipped, but yeah.
Let's go visit that library and see if it.
Yeah, it won't show up properly unless you restart your.
It's there-ish.
So yeah, Control-C and then restart your Tethys and it should start.
For some reason, it doesn't refresh the static icons. And that was another thing I have to figure out. It does without the restart, but it won't work right now because we didn't configure the primary Geoserver. So
Let's do
as
one
soon
more
as
thing before we close out this thing. It'll take 1 minute. And Evan, if you could just go back to your terminal and do Control C, and then let's scaffold a new app. So go up one level, CD space ... Okay, and then let's see. I think we have to create the folder and scaffold it within the folder. So do M.
it'll create the folder.
Oh, will it? Okay, so just
Yeah.
Then just type Tethys scaffold, and then let's call it Evan app just for fun, so we know it's the new one. Okay. Okay, proper name for the app. What do you want to call it? So in quotes, give it a nice complete name.
Well, I can't spell my own name.
I think a nap app would be good.
Nap app. Okay. Brief description.
My first app, something.
Mm-hmm, for fun. Okay, good. Yeah, you can hit enter and it'll use the defaults if you want.
No, we're not.
Put tags in it. So you can just hit enter and use the defaults on all of these, but you see the kinds of options that you can supply when you're building a new app.
Oh.
Okay, so it made it. Now ls. And so there it is, Tethys app - Evan app. So move into that folder, CD space, yeah, you can T tab. And now do install. So Tethys space install. So
Another
it's,
suggestion: new app should automatically be installed.
oh yeah, totally. Okay, now refresh start your server and then refresh the window.
Tethys manage.
Yeah.
That one.
And there it is.
Look at that.
So you've got your own
Open
app
up Evan
now
app.
that you can van. So click
X-rays.
it and you could go into it, and it's just got that basic structure. So now, you know, the next part of the training would be going into the actual folder structure where all these files live and how to edit them and change the HTML and the templating and so forth.
That's cool.
Okay.
Very good. Is that, you follow that along good, Alma?
I mean, I'll be honest.
Do it as you were going. I just watched, so I'll probably come back
Oh,
and
that's
watch the
fine.
recording.
Yeah.
I think I want the recording myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll share the recording with everybody here. I know there
That'd
were
be great.
several that couldn't make it, but I think
Mhm.
this should help you all get Tethys installed and an app up there and kind of begin to go, and we'll kind of review this on Tuesday.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Dr. Ames.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rohit.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep, thanks guys. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Too.